Hi, this is Loren from the Tanglewood Wellness Center. I've been asked to address a question about things like chia seeds and flax seeds. How do these fit into the picture? They're whole foods. Are they things we should be consuming or not consuming? The wave of looking to these things to get what we need is actually a move in the wrong direction. Now, why would I say that? Well, how well do we digest these seeds? How well do we digest flax seeds? We don't digest them at all. Okay? Remember that plants are focused on one thing: reproduction. Okay? They want to survive, they want to create more. They make their seeds very hard to digest. They do not want their seeds digested. Okay? And so they do everything they can to ensure that they're not easily digested. Our systems have very weak hydrochloric acid. We don't digest the proteins that cover these seeds very well. So unless we chew the seeds up, they pass right through our system. And flax seeds we really can't digest. What people do is they soak them and use the slimy stuff that comes off of them, right? But what we're doing then is we're not going out in nature and finding a food we can eat. We're taking something home and saying, okay, well, what do I need to do to make this actually useful for me? It's a process. We don't need to do that. There's no need for that. The key is to get your body into a state of balance. Okay? Because how could we possibly get enough essential fatty acids without consuming those things? Remember, the cell nucleus of every cell is made of fat. Every living cell contains fat. Your watermelon contains fat. Your lettuce contains fat. Bananas contain fat. Okay? Mangoes. Every single fruit. Every leafy green. Everything you eat that was ever alive contains fat. Every single cell. The thing is, what most people are doing is they're putting, a typical American, for instance, is taking mostly cooked and processed food, where most of this has been destroyed, and putting it into a body that is so inefficient and so toxic and so dehydrated, it can't really effectively use what's coming in. But when the body is clean and functioning well, it's able to easily get what it needs from the whole foods we're consuming. And more easily from fruit than anything else. Why is that? Fruit has a benefit that no other food really has. Again, think about the green banana, okay? We got green bananas right here behind the building. You could probably hurt somebody seriously with them because they're hard as rocks when they're dark green. But what's going to happen over the course of the next month or two to those bananas? They're going to slowly change color. From a dark green to a light green, from light green to yellow, from yellow to spotted, eventually to completely black. Okay? There's a window in there where they're really edible. Are they edible now when they're dark green? No. You and I have a very hard time digesting solid starch. Whether it's a potato or a banana, in its raw state, it's solid starch. If it's a green, unripe banana, we can't really digest it. We're not designed for that. But the banana ripens to the extent that the vast majority of that starch is converted to sugar. And how do we know? Because now it tastes good, right? It tastes good to us, and we can easily digest it. And as the banana continues to ripen, it finally gets to a point where it begins to ferment. And it's not just a banana, it could be any fruit. Same process. Okay? So there's a window of time in there during which we can eat it, and it benefits us. But it's not just the starch that's being converted to sugar. What happens as the banana is ripening? What's actually going on as the banana is ripening? What's happening is that the enzymes in the banana are breaking the banana down. Okay? So there are lipases. What's a lipase? A lipase is a fat-digesting or fat-splitting enzyme. There are lipases in the banana. And what they're doing is they're breaking the fat in the banana, not a lot, but always some, into its essential fatty acid components, which means your body doesn't have to do that work. if the fruit is ripe and raw and not blended. Because if you blend it, what happens? You oxidize most of that. You destroy much of it. Okay? So eat it in its whole natural state, and the enzymes are breaking down all of the macronutrients into their component parts. Because remember, we don't actually need fat anyway. What we need are essential fatty acids. We don't need protein, we need amino acids. That's what happens when the banana ripens, or any other fruit. It's breaking the macronutrients down, the protein, the starch, the fat, into the component parts, the simple sugars that we can actually use. We can't use starch. We need simple sugar. We can't use the fats or proteins, but the enzymes, as the banana ripens, is breaking it down for us. So when we eat ripe fruit, the body has very little work to do. Okay? In that way, with none of those nutrients destroyed by cooking or processing or oxidation, because they're all intact, the body's working as well as possible, now getting what we need should be relatively easy. As I mentioned at one point, I think, when people start out on this path without fasting, they may very well feel drawn to eat a lot of concentrated fats at first, because they've been consuming, up until that point, 25 to 35% of their calories from fat. Their bodies have become very inefficient with regard to processing fat. So they might still need vast amounts of it at first. But what you want to do is understand that the body's always changing. So if today, if right now, at this point of your life, you need a bunch of nuts and seeds to feel okay, maybe you do. But that doesn't mean you're going to in a month. You want to pay attention. It's going to change. Okay, it's going to shift, and you want to be sure that you're listening to your body. Because as long as you're stuck up here in your head, it's never going to be a successful long-term venture. And so, how many people today are now saying, well, I'm now eating some cooked food? Because they weren't thriving on raw food anymore. Why not? Well, there's a number of possible reasons. One of them may well be that they weren't listening to their body ever. So the whole time, they had an idea and maybe it worked for them for a while, stopped working because they weren't actually meeting their body's needs. Maybe they were consuming too much fat. Maybe they weren't consuming enough fat. Maybe they were consuming too much food. I know a lot of people doing that. Okay? So it comes down to getting the body clean and listening to the body. But is listening to the body difficult? I mean, we're all used to getting the message that shouldn't have done that, right? Everyone had this experience at some point, maybe after a Thanksgiving meal or, some binge of some kind. Shouldn't have done that. That was a mistake. Everyone's had that experience at some point. Most of us have. But can we really listen to all the messages all the time? Absolutely. We absolutely can. It requires being willing to really tune in. Really tune in. I mean, in every single moment of our lives, our bodies are sending us messages about their needs. They're telling you when to go to sleep. But how often do you say, yeah, but I want to watch the end of the movie? Or, I need to answer all these emails. Or, I want to watch some videos on YouTube. Or, whatever it is. I mean, most people are not paying attention. But the body's sending them that message very clearly. Okay? The body is sending us messages that tell us when to get up and be physically active. I heard from someone today that said, there's no way I can get away from work. I can't fast. But I've got a long list of serious conditions. What should I do? And I gave her a reply which included, improve your diet. Okay? Make that change. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. I didn't say, work out for an hour every day. Why not? Because if her body's sick, what it probably doesn't need is a whole bunch of stress from exercise. There's a time for that, but not when the body needs to heal. When it needs to heal, what it needs to do is rest. Just like you guys, just like I've instructed you guys to do this whole time, right? Exercise is a great thing. It doesn't mean you should be exercising now while you're fasting. You absolutely should not be exercising any more than absolutely necessary. It's just a question of tuning in and being willing to put your ego aside. You've been around the sun more than anybody else here, and you've been involved with alternative health for a long time, haven't you? You know a lot. Sometimes that gets in the way, because we have to take all that stuff we know and willfully put it aside. And remember, beginner's mind. Maybe, like all the supplements, maybe that wasn't in my best interest after all. Okay? So if we can put all that stuff aside, then we can really be the empty vessel. We can tune in. What's the body telling me now? Okay, it's time to go rest. Okay? Or it's time to have some water. Or it's time to get some sun. Or it's time to get out of the sun. I mean, there's another place where people don't listen. The body's telling us, but we're not getting the message. I'm guilty of this, by the way. If the waves are big, I'm probably going to stay out there too long. Okay? So, your body is going to send you messages, and sometimes we don't necessarily know what the message is exactly. If you're deficient in potassium, you're probably going to get messages that say, eat watermelon, avocados, bananas, cantaloupe, etc. You don't have to know that those things are high in potassium. If your body is imbalanced and therefore is needing more minerals than most people would need, you're going to get messages that say, give me greens, now give me more greens, and now give me even more. Or that's not the message most of us get. That may be the message that you'll get under those circumstances. You don't have to know why. Okay? You just want to trust that message. The difficult part, though, for some people is separating out what's coming from the body and what's coming from the ego. Now, someone says, well, my body is telling me to eat only durian every day, 3 times a day. Right? Is this going to work? What do you think, Kat? Not for long, because it's really heavy stuff. So I love it and it feels great, but I don't think you want to live on durian alone, especially not the ones in the U.S., which are not organic. Ego wants to eat that because we love it. But where's that really coming from? I would suggest it's an emotional imbalance. I had a man on staff years ago, great guy, usually very sober kind of a guy, he wouldn't overeat, etc. Once a month we would have a durian party at the center. We had a clearing in the woods, we'd have a campfire, we'd all sit around, I'd get 2 or 3 cases of durian. There'd be anywhere from 8 to 12 of us, and we'd have durian for dinner that night. And every time we did that, he would eat durian until he could barely move. Crawl back to his room, little cottage, in pain, every time. Right? And I was like, damn, dude, you need to learn from what's going on here. But what's happening? Gluttony around durian. Why? What's going on there? This is an emotional imbalance where the body, it's like we want to, it's essentially fear of lack is what gluttony is. Fear of lack. We consume everything we can now because there may not be any tomorrow. That's fear of lack. All right? But, what's the opposite of that? Recognizing that we live in a completely abundant universe. So you never need to overeat for fear of lack, because you know that there'll always be what you need tomorrow. Always. Has anyone here, not including these last 3 weeks, anyone here ever really gone hungry? Right? You guys have all been fasting for a while, but hasn't it been true that in your life, up until now, you've pretty much been able to get food when you needed to? So, but there are a lot of people operating from this fear. They're going to eat as much as they can because there may not be enough. And some people grew up with, with a lot of brothers and sisters and not enough food, and wound up sort of competing with other people to get what they needed or what they wanted. And they wind up creating this embedded habit, completely unconscious. We want to get conscious about that stuff. Once we can do that, then we can really listen to the body's true messages. We also want to be sure that we're not being guided by fear, which is the #1 motivator for most people. So whatever the particular fear might be, however food might relate to that fear, we want to be sure that we're separating that out as well. But if we're really listening to the body, there's no fear. The body doesn't have fear. The body is going to tell you what its needs are right now. Fear or no fear. Whether you're experiencing fear or not, your body is telling you what it really needs if you can tune into that. That can be a little challenging to do, but it requires practice. Most people that I've worked with have had very little experience doing that in their lives. I had very little experience doing that until 20 years ago when I started to make this shift myself. And it just becomes practice. We get better and better as we practice it. Okay? Hope that helps.